I want to introduce Tom Suder. He's the Chief Executive Officer at the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, better known as Atarc. And Tom and I have known each other for quite a few years. So thank you for joining me here today, Tom.
No, thank you for having me, Jeremy. I'm honored to be on the show.
So let's talk about you, right? You do a lot of events and you organize things. You talk to a lot of people, but maybe you don't talk about how you started. Where are you from and who are you and what do you do?
Well, I think where you come from tells you a lot about you. I'm from a little town a steel mill town in Western Pennsylvania called Aliquippa. And Aliquippa produced more steel in World War II than Germany or Japan. But by the 70s, it had kind of fallen on hard times. And my family ended up moving out of Western Pennsylvania to Northern Virginia in the late 70s just because of that. But, it's a very hardworking town. Everybody worked hard. I think a lot of my cousins and a lot of my relatives, just kind of a hardworking blue collar town. And I've always had respect for the blue collar community just coming from that.
So then, like, how did you decide? I mean, did you go to college route? Did you go work route? What did that look like for you?
I did. So I'm a Virginia, we grew up in Northern Virginia. We weren't super rich people. My dad was the McDonald's manager. I was thinking about going to Penn State or some other place, but I ended up going to Virginia Tech. It was a nice in-state school. I started off in engineering. My uncle was a very successful business person, and he kind of like worked with me on some engineering principles when I was growing up. So I thought that's really what I wanted to do. And then I hit calculus. So I ended up switching over to poli-sci, but I always had this entrepreneurial idea that I wanted to start a company at some point. So, I love Virginia Tech. I have so many contacts and friends. I think that besides the academics, which were fantastic, I was the sports editor of the college paper. So that was a lot of fun. So you're going around to all the road trips wherever Virginia Tech is playing basketball, whether it's in Hawaii. Somehow I finagled a trip for some in-depth coverage of the Virginia Tech basketball team as we got destroyed by Duke in the 80s, late 80s, when they had that great team with Bobby Hurley and Christian Laettner. But I learned that when you're talking to a pro athlete, you get over being scared, or you're not going to succeed very long. So I think that was really what translated the best of the business world is you have to ask people questions, you have to interview them, you can't stutter. So I think that helped me when I started after college and I started heading to the business world. I think that was probably one of the more helpful things out of Virginia Tech.
So you said, did you did a degree in poli-sci?
Yes. And you know what, when you're getting at, I don't know if you remember, but back in the 90s, early 90s, it was not that easy to get a job. The economy wasn't that great. And my poli-sci career ended when I really realized I was going to have to do door-to-door canvassing it was just like for $10 an hour. So I was like, I don't think I really want to do that. So I actually started taking some classes, MIS classes, to like learn Novell. Because I knew I wanted to be in computers. I didn't know what, but I was like, kind of just trying to learn about that. And then I ended up getting my first real job out of college was working for a communications company that was installing building cabling back in the mid 90s. And then that's what kind of got me down the tech path at that point.
Oh, interesting. So cabling for other businesses or for that company itself?
It was cabling we did some government agencies as well. Okay. I mean, we did Department of Transportation. This is when you were first getting to Cat 5, Category 5. So I worked for a very, they weren't a huge company, but we'd wire up government buildings, commercial buildings, and it really got me good knowledge of how to do this to a degree. But I was only there about a year and a half, and one of the founders of the company, we wanted to start a different company. So we started, I got a contract with Sprint on this little government contract called FTS 2000. And we started doing circuit deployments installing communications gear and cabling for Sprint on FTS 2000. And that was back in 95. We'd started a company called Concert Technologies. And I was there 17 years, but basically we worked with all the telecom carriers, MCI, which became WorldCom, which became Verizon. Yeah. We worked with, CenturyLink, which is now Lumen. We worked with we ended up working for AT&T. So it started out with FTS 2000, it went to FTS 2001, and then networks. And now it's, EIS. Right. But it was a very good experience. We were doing maybe 500 deployments a week at our peak. I mean, we had the Postal Service contract. So there's 38,000 post offices. We would, install communication gear, like a router, and install cabling it there. I did all the NMCI, the Navy. I did DISA circuits. I definitely did the SEC. We did, I think I was in AT&F at GSA. I did a count once. We had like 500 deployments there or something crazy, but it was, we went through 9/11. We went through Katrina. Mm-hmm. We went through, the sniper shooting in Northern Virginia, in Virginia and Maryland. They had a command center in Montgomery County for the ATF. So, you really learn how to build a company from scratch. And the cool thing too is I was a CTO. So I got to build systems. How do we, we had the most efficient file folder system in the world. I think we had 50,000 files. Wow. And during that process, I was like, well, how can we automate this? Because it was you lose one file folder, there's 50,000. How are you going to find it? So we started to build some tools. And I actually remember looking at, low to no code programs. I mean, it was in its infancy. It was like Salesforce in 2000. Mm-hmm. But we ended up building our own custom deployment method. And it was just, it was a good run. I had done it for 17 years. And then I started thinking, what else do I want to do? So I ended up getting bought out of that company in 2010 and started getting into some different things.
So how did that turn into Atarc?
Well, I had been working with ACT-IAC, which, as you know, you're very involved, very outstanding organization. And I just done some volunteer things. I kind of got that bug, right? You get that bug. I think I volunteered for the wine tasting at ELC. And now I'm like organizing things. I had a team with me at concert too. So it was like kind of a little bit easier for me. I had this big team over there, so I could, everybody thought I was doing everything. It was really my team. But then I started participating in MOC and ELC. So when I started my own company, I wanted to do something. I couldn't, I didn't want to do what I was doing before, but field deployments really interested me because I was, sending these teams out all over the place. And then the advent of the iPad was like 2010 was iPad 1, the iPhones had come out. So I started this consultancy called MobileGov, but I started realizing very soon, you can't do it by yourself. There's security, there's devices, there's like 8 different groups that need to come together to make something happen. So I started a group at ACT-IAC called the Advanced Mobility Working Group. And, that's when I really started to do what I'm doing now. This working group is, you have to have a great champion. I had a great champion. It was Rick Holgate. He was the CIO of the ATF. Rick is now with Gartner. I had a bunch of other government people like DJ Catchman at the VA. I had the DOD. We got together this powerful group of government people. And I think I learned how to do things. We had a very large group, and it was good because you had DHS talking to DOD and talking to civilian agencies. And we kind of got this group together, and we actually proposed to Lisa Schlosser, who was the deputy CIO at that time, we need to have a federal government strategy. And Steve Van Rokel was the CIO, and he said it's not in his top 10. He told me that at the time, but he he started thinking about it, and he got a lot of demand generation from the government. And they came out with a digital government strategy, I think in January of 2012. It was above and beyond what we were thinking. We were thinking mobility, but they had things like APIs. They had, they incorporated some other things there that I thought were really, really good. The APIs was, this is 10 years ago, we were talking about APIs, so that was just a monumental effort. And we had some great folks there. And that's kind of what got me into this nonprofit space.
Huh. So and was it that activity then that drove you to, because Atarc is slightly different than ACT-IAC, right? It's got a different focus area.
Yeah, it is. I just, I started having such a passion for it. It was becoming like a full-time thing. And then what probably prompted me to do Atarc was the federal government, the USDA and the CIO Council had this event. And when we had the GSA conference scandal, they wanted somebody to take it over. Well, the problem was the event was 10 weeks from now. So ACT-IAC, because they're smart, didn't want to do that. So I ended up doing that. And that's what led to one thing to another. I started, I was kind of mobility focused. And then Dave McClure, who was working at GSA at the Office of Citizen Services, wanted to do a FedRAMP program. He was launching FedRAMP. So then it just started to be, I needed to start my own thing, just to get that going. And I think what we've done is we're more on the product side, the software companies, they want to get to the federal government. Yeah. And I've tried to harmonize my things with other organizations like ACT-IAC. They have some groups that, hey, they're doing a good job in them, but we kind of take on emerging technology issues. That's what I think what we're really, we really focus on.
Yeah. If I was to give my kind of, very quick summary of the Atarc, I would agree with you. You are focused on the products, which is a good space as well, right? To get visibility on what's out there and how government can take advantage of it and use it.
You're right. And I learned a lot because I really was on the services side. I was more on the ACT-IAC side. When I got on the product side, I started really seeing that in some ways, the product companies were having a tough time getting directly to the federal government. Mm-hmm. You've got the gatekeepers, which are sometimes the integrators. And, not all government people are like this, but they're relying on that integrator to the point where, they're not allowing automation and some other technologies. So I really feel like our purpose is to get this technology in front of the federal government so they can make some better decisions. At the end of the day, they're going to need a contractor to probably install it. It's usually not one product. So integrators are very vital. But, I really started to see sometimes it's the contractors are driven by the butts and seats more than bringing the most effective technology and the best value. So I think we're the balance. We're trying to get the software companies an audience directly with the federal government.
That makes a big difference. Yeah. So, and that's far from where you started, right?
It just happened. It wasn't I wish it was some master plan I drew up, but it seemed like in the mobile space, especially, and I see it with every emerging technologies, the integrators really don't have the expertise in the emerging technology. So the emerging technology companies, like if you look at RPA, UiPath, and Blue Prism, and all, they came in early. The integrators really don't know much about it. Right. So they get there early and they're doing the early education. And then after it matures, you see the integrators start to adopt it, and you see, all these companies that are doing great work. So I think we're kind of there in the beginning. We're kind of like drawing that awareness. We're trying to speed that adoption of technology that's coming, whether I'm here or not, it's coming. But I'm hoping that we're speeding that adoption of technology.
That's good. That's a good place to be. So, as you've gone through your career, what's something that you've seen that if we came to you, Tom, and said, Tom, you get to make a decision on something we're going to change or something we should consider changing, what would that look like for you? What's something you've witnessed in your career?
I think that our hiring practices, it's around reskilling and hiring is just bad. I mean, we see people get educated. Maybe they don't have a formal degree. They don't have a computer science degree, but they're getting practical knowledge throughout their career. How do we rate each of those building blocks so that they can get a job? I know the White House a couple of years ago had a big push for reskilling around cyber and data and analytics. And it's great. All these people went through this course and it was fantastic, but it didn't translate to the job.
Right.
How do you have these incremental things? So I can hire somebody. They might not have started out in cybersecurity, but they're basically in cybersecurity. I think that is the hardest code to crack. That's the hard one. I've saw, hopefully OPM, I've seen a couple little promising pilots. So it's not, I'm learning that the technology is one thing. I think we're good at that, but if we're not going to have the skills behind it to work the technology, they're not going to do it. I mean, I just think back with David Bray with the FCC, he was starting to move to really outsource his compute. They weren't really going to the cloud so much. They were going to, outsource the data center, and the people were rebelled. They didn't want to learn anything new. They didn't want to learn about the cloud. They were, it was a contractor that he had there. And I see it with government employees. It's like we have to take them into consideration. If you're going to go to the cloud, which is fantastic, right? I have to invest in my people to be reskilled. So, those are some of the things that I think that are most challenging. They're not technical. I think procurement's gotten a little better. On the DoD side, we have OTAs. That's going fantastic. I mean, that's really speeding the adoption of technology. We've seen in the IRS, we've had some innovations over there where they're bringing on smaller non-traditionals. I like it. I like where the trend is there. The hiring and the reskilling part still needs work.
Absolutely. I would agree with you. So what's next for you? What are things looking like here in the near future for you and for Atarc?
Thanks for asking that. I think that we're really good at writing technical white papers and producing a lot of materials. We have some really active working groups. It's really around lab services. To us we had a zero trust lab. We still do. And we put a call out, our government group that was working the zero trust, headed by Jerry Karen, who's the HHS-OIG CIO, and Trefinia Salzman, who's a cybersecurity architect at SBA. They led this program, but they came out with 12 use cases. So industry came back. Each of the solution providers came back, software companies came back with their version of zero trust. And I thought it went great. The next phase of the lab is individual use cases from agencies like the SEC that say, hey, here's what I have working right now. How can you come back to me? And I actually think it'll be an integrator play where they come back with a solution. That's the future of the lab. We're going to do that in Desect Ops. We're going to do that in AI. We also are partnering directly with agencies more. We're starting to partner directly with agencies on different events, different activities. We're part of an OTA consortium called Tradewind, which is the Joint AI Centers, OTA, and they have 5 contracts rolled under it now. We're very much a part of that. So I like the hands-on. We are working as a proxy to the government. They don't know how to do events. They don't need to know how to do events. They're not that good at it, and they shouldn't be, so let us do that heavy lifting, get your message out there. And the last thing is we've done a lot of agency events, and we're going to continue to do more. We did one with GSA on category management. We had about 1,300 people on it. We did one with IRS. We did one with USDA. We did one with NASA. It's very successful on digital transformation. So, we're trying to work directly with the government as much as possible.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think you have an interesting story, and I'm very eager to see and get more involved with Atarc as it goes into here in the near future.
You got it, brother. Thanks for having me.